What do Falcons do? We rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general, the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, the Golden Hard Doc, and a lifelong sports fan. Coming back to you today, continuing the summer series where I go through each division, talk about what I think of them, who's been added on to each team, what I think the record's going to be, talk a little bit about the draft, not much. It's kind of an all-inclusive video, and I'm going to try and keep it under about 15 minutes per division. I've already done the NFC South, and I'm continuing the NFC journey today with the NFC East. So, right out the gate, you've got the New York Giants, the Dallas Cowboys, Washington Commies, Philadelphia Eagles. We'll go through them, but the thing you need to know about the NFC East is that they are going to be playing the AFC North. Every opponent will be played by every team. They're also playing the NFC South this year, and then each team is going to get one opponent based on where they finished last year from the AFC South. So not necessarily the toughest schedule on paper, though I would say the AFC South was one of the most improved divisions overall. NFC South, we'll see. The Falcons are certainly much improved. Saints are kind of staying in mediocrity, but still a good team. Tampa Bay has re-signed some great players, and then Carolina's a complete wild card. We'll see what happens. They're still expected to be a bad team, so could be an easy schedule, but then with the AFC North, every single team in that division is tough. They beat the crap out of each other every year, and then they beat the crap out of other teams every year. So it's going to be some really hard smash mouth football from those teams. So let's jump into it. We have the New York Giants. Let's open up with them. Last year finishing 6-11, but they have several new additions, including a new defensive coordinator in Shane Bowen. We'll see how that shapes up because defense was not their strong suit. They are losing guys like Saquon Barkley to the Eagles, of all people. Kind of an FU move by Barkley. They're also losing Sterling Shepard, which will be replaced later on. Ashawn Robinson, that's a tough loss. Xavier McKinney is the biggest loss on defense at safety. Then they're also losing guys like Justin Pugh, Jahan Ward, Adoree Jackson, and Matt Pertz. So losing a few pieces, but gaining huge edge rusher in a trade with Brian Burns. Not necessarily the same player, but Devin Singletary coming in and an okay running back for a couple of different teams at this point. They made a trade for Drew Lock to back up Daniel Jones, and I'm not going to lie, I do see Drew Lock playing it sometime this season. And then they also got Jermaine Illuminor is another notable signing from the Raiders to jump in at tackle. He's a guy who's been pretty good the last couple of years. Started with Minnesota, has moved through the league a little bit, but the last couple of years been with the Raiders. So not a bad signing. And then you go to their draft where they took Malik Neighbors early. I think a lot of people had them taking Joe Alt, but then it wasn't even available to them because the Chargers ended up doing that. So kind of a surprising move. I thought Neighbors would go to the Chargers and Alt would go here, but it didn't end up happening. To replace Xavier McKinney, they took Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota for safety. They ended up in the third round taking Andrew Phillips at corner, so trying to fill some needs there. And a few other guys through here. Tyrone Tracy could be an interesting fantasy running back, predominantly because it's a fairly weak running back room. Even with Devin Singletary there, he's not a bad running back, but he's a little undersized, and he's got to be used the right way. It's a team that struggled in the run without Saquon the last few years, so it's going to be interesting to see how they adapt. Reasonably speaking here, they're going to go through and have a lot of tough games. They're going to have to play at the Browns. They get the Cowboys like 4 days later on Thursday Night Football. They have to go to the Seahawks. They have the Bengals. They're at the Steelers. They get the Ravens. They are at the Falcons. They get the Colts as their unique team, and then they play the Vikings in Week 1, which won't be the easiest game in the world. But again, kind of a question mark of what are the Vikings, and I'll talk about them more next week when we get to them. Reasonably, when I went through the schedule and gave this team the benefit of the doubt in more games than not, I reasonably see their ceiling being 11-6. That is if everything goes absolutely perfect for this team. It's not a Super Bowl team, but it could be a playoff team, and that is if everything went absolutely according to plan. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I don't know what this team is, so this could be an absolute garbage dumpster fire of a team, and they could be the worst in their division. I think they have the potential to be the worst in their division. So 3-14 is their floor when I go through and basically don't give them the benefit of a doubt. So when you come back and you look at this more from a 50-50 type thing, giving a little bit of an edge to teams I think are slightly better on paper, I think reasonably they finished at 6-11 last year. I'm sorry, Giants. I just don't think you're good with Danny Dimes. I think you've got to move on at quarterback, and I just think that with this schedule, you're reasonably looking at 6-11. I think 7-10 is possible, but 6-11 is where I have you finishing the season at. Then we're going to move on to the Dallas Cowboys. Last year, division champions at 12-5. The Dallas Cowboys did what they have always done and failed in January in the postseason. They've been doing that for almost 30 years now, and it did not stop this past season. So it's almost a foregone conclusion that they're going to make the playoffs every year, except this year it's going to be a little bit tougher to do that because they're losing some key pieces here. They're losing guys like Tyron Smith, their amazing tackle. They're losing Dorrance Armstrong, Tony Pollard, Stephon Gilmore, Tyler Biatz, I'm not sure. He's a great center. I can't say his name, though. Losing Michael Gallup, don't know that that's a huge loss. Also losing Dante Fowler, who had an okay year with him, and Leighton Vander Esch, who retired. So this is going to be a tough year for them because then they turn around and basically do nothing in free agency. Nothing of note. I made a note here that they took Zeke Elliott, Royce Freeman, Chuma Edoga as a kind of guard in there. And I just put a bunch of question marks when I was going through my rundown because I don't know what they're doing. Jerry Jones was all in, and it does not seem like a very all-in move to not be active in free agency, especially with some of the guys that were available. Now it's just going to be kind of take whatever you can get. They did get some guys in the draft. They took Tyler Guyton in the draft from Oklahoma towards the tail end, and then they also took edge rusher Marshawn Kneeland out of Western Michigan at the back end of the second round. Cooper Beebe, I'm not sure how you say his name, but a guard from Kansas State, early third round, and then Marist Lufau, I don't know, I'm sure he will end up being great at linebacker. So they did fill some of the needs that they had through the draft, and they can only hope that these guys end up being good. Going through their schedule, though, you still have CeeDee Lamb, you still have their amazing quarterback in Dak Prescott, and you still have some decent coaching, some decent teams. McCarthy is not the worst coach in the world. He just is. I equate him to, a just really solid coach. He is the Mark Richt of the NFL. He is going to have the best 11-6 or 12-5 team that never makes it to the final dance that you ever see, because something's going to go catastrophically wrong towards the end. I just don't think with Mike McCarthy there that you end up winning a Super Bowl. I don't know that you end up winning a conference championship. So far, you have not proven that you can really win a playoff game. But you go to the Browns, you go to the 49ers, you have to go to the Falcons, you get the Texans at home, which is going to be a great game. You get the Lions at home. But again, you play everybody in the AFC North, you play everybody in the NFC South, and then we talked about your one opponent in the Texans, which is going to be tough from the AFC South. Altogether, though, if everything goes perfect for this team, 13-4, I think, is their ceiling. I still think they're going to be a winning football team. 9-8, I have as their 4. I almost gave them an 8-9, but I just ended up giving them the edge in at least one more game because I just think they're going to find a way to win, to will a win out of some game that they had no business winning. And ultimately, I do think that they finish with a decent record at 11-6. So still going to be an okay year, but it's going to be a very interesting year. I don't think you're going to see as high-flying of an offense. Tony Pollard really didn't work out last year at running back, so we'll see what Zeke can do and Royce Freeman can do. But they really did not inspire confidence with their running back room. I think they took the short guy, Vaughn, last year. Maybe he'll finally get his shot at the NFL level, so they really didn't use him last year. But yeah, I think 11-6 is a reasonable finish for this team. So we're going to move on to the Washington Commanders. And this is one of the dark horse teams of the entire year. They have a new offensive coordinator. They have a new defensive coordinator. They have a new head coach in a former Falcons head coach in Dan Quinn, bringing another interesting storyline to the Falcons season later in the year. And then you also end up with a new general manager and fairly new ownership in the last 2 years. So with the possibility of a new stadium 45 minutes north of where you currently are in the next couple of years here. So a lot of promise. They did have a very good draft. We'll get to that in a moment. But they are losing guys like Sam Howell to a trade. Maybe addition by subtraction. They're losing Antonio Gibson. We'll talk about that replacement. Curtis Samuel has been with the team for a few years. Logan Thomas has felt like just a staple for this team. Abdullah Anderson. Kendall Fuller is a huge loss for them, and I'm kind of glad he's not there because he has been the bane of the Falcons' existence for the last 2 years. Casey Toole and Cody Barton, they're also gone. But they were very active in free agency. getting guys like Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz to replace some longtime guys at the team. Nick Algoretti at offensive guard. You have Tyler Batts out of Dallas, kind of as an FU move to Dallas, coming over to Washington. Dorrance Armstrong also kind of in that FU move to the New York Giants coming over. I think that was him. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe he was with somebody else. I can't remember off the top of my head here looking. You've also got Frankie Luvo, Bobby Wagner, Jeremy Chin, Dante Fowler. This feels like a team that might have been good in like 2018, 2019 with some of the draft picks that you have in here, or some of the former draft picks, I should say. And then they got really better, though, at quarterback. They took Jaden Daniels, number 2 overall, which I think was a phenomenal move. I think he could do really well there. But he's got to stay healthy, and they've got to get out of FedEx Field as quickly as possible because that field is a nightmare. It has destroyed the legs of numerous quarterbacks for their own team and for other teams. But they also took Jazon Newton, who I wish the Falcons had taken. Took him right after the Falcons took Rook Orororo. And I like Rook. He sounds like a really motivated player, and I think he's going to be great for us. I think Newton had better upside on paper, so I'm a little sour at that move. They come back. They had a total of 5 day 3 picks. They took Mike Senristil out of Michigan at corner. They took Ben Sinnott at tight end out of Kansas State. In the 3rd round, they took Brandon Coleman, offensive guard. And the guy that might be the dark horse of the draft was projected a little bit later. But, again, if he has anything like his family lineage says, Luke McCaffrey will be an excellent wide receiver. We'll see if he can live up to the hype. But he's a guy that I think they will really come to lean on over the course of the year. And I do like that he's coming in with Jaden Daniels because they can really build a rapport with one another. When I go through the schedule, I still think every game is a toss-up here. I could not pinpoint and say these are games I absolutely think this team is going to win because I know Cliff Kingsbury, an offensive coordinator, is hit or miss with his high-flying offense. I think it's great that he has a running quarterback because he kind of needs one. And then you got Joe Witt Jr., at defensive coordinator. I don't know much about him. But every game is tough. You got to go to the Cardinals, so that'll be a Cliff Kingsbury revenge game. You got the Bears at home. You have to go to the Bucks. You have to go to the Bengals. You go to the Saints. And every game could be tough here. I think reasonably, though, if I give you the benefit of the doubt, you reasonably could, with everything working in your favor, if I gave the New York Giants 11-6, I have to give you also a ceiling of 11-6. Just more than anything because I think you are better than the Giants. And I don't say that lightly. I think the Giants I think they had a really good year 2 years ago, and they haven't been great. You guys have been garbage for a long time. But I do think that you will finish better than last year. I think your floor is higher than the Giants. 6-11 is what I have your floor at. And I reasonably, when I went through everything and thought about how I actually thought this was going to go, you're going to be much happier than your 4-13 last year. You're going to be 7-10, which sucks as somebody who's gone 7-10 for the last 3 years and then 4-12 the year before that. It does suck. But it sucks less knowing that you are on the right track to getting better. You could be a dark horse team that surprises us and turns into this year's Texans. I just don't think it's going to happen. And finally, we're going to finish with the Philadelphia Eagles. They have a couple of new coordinators. You got Vic Fangio at defensive coordinator, and then you have Kellen Moore at offensive coordinator. This is a team that had the division in the palm of their hands last year and then went 1-5 in the final 6 games of the year to completely blow the lead, and then they blew their first playoff game as well. It was like they completely fell apart. Something happened with Jalen Smith. It just something was not right with the team. Sorry, Jalen Hurts. I don't know what it was. It just something was off about this team. It might have been that teams figured out the secondary, which was garbage. And this is a team that lost a ton of talent, but they also were very active in free agency. So active that I did not even take time to list everyone because I thought that a lot of guys were potentially great pickups for them. But they're losing Rashad Penny, DeAndre Swift, Boston Scott, the longtime running back there. They're losing Jack Driscoll. Jason Kelsey is retiring, the heart and soul of the tush push. Hassan Reddick got traded. You're losing Fletcher Cox too. I think he retired as well. Shaq Leonard and Kevin Byard, all those guys are tough to replace. But you're getting Saquon Barkley. You got Kenny Pickett to back up Hurts in a trade. You got Mekhi Becton, who's like a hit or miss guy. He was drafted way too high. Bryce Huff. You extended A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, which I love both of those moves. You got Devin White out of the Bucks free agent losses. You got C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who, if he can stay healthy, is going to be a great corner. And then you re-signed Jake Elliott. But your draft was even better. I think you made yourself have the best corner room in the draft by taking the two guys that I think were the best corners in this draft. Took Quinyon Mitchell and then turned around and took Cooper DeJean. I think both of those guys are awesome. Then you took Jalix Hunt out of Houston Christian, edge rusher, and a few other guys along the way there. Aniyah Smith is a guy that jumps out at me at wide receiver, though he's not going to have a lot of playing time if A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith stay healthy. This is a solid room. You still have Dallas Goedert there as well at tight end, so I like the Eagles. Looking at their schedule, they do have tough games. They open at with the Packers in Brazil. Technically, that's a home game for them. They have the Falcons at home for their first game at home in week 2. They go to the Saints and the Bucks the following 2 weeks. They get have to go to the Bengals. They get the Jaguars. They go to the Rams, and then they play everybody in their division. It is what it is. The Cowboys will be competitive, and everybody else is a toss-up. Honestly, looking at their schedule, I still think that they're a good team. I don't think they're bad. I think they are going to have a winning season no matter what. 14-3, I think, is their absolute ceiling. If everything goes the way that it could and possibly should, I think that is an absolute ceiling for them. 10-7 feels like a good floor for them. I don't think they're going to be worse than a playoff team, but they might be the 7th team in. It's hard to say. And then 12-5 is where I honestly see them finishing, which would put them at number 1 in the division this year. Then Cowboys number 2, and then the Commies 3, Giants 4, and the last 2 teams missing out of the playoffs. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Am I just full of garbage? Am I spot on with any of this? Do I have any kind of pulse on any of these teams that I don't follow regularly? I'd love to hear your comments down below. Thank you for watching, liking, sharing, and subscribing. And as always, rise up.